Hello, welcome to another video about Flutter. This time we're going to talk about Firebase, in this case specifically Firestore, which has a very helpful real-time database, but also Firestore, which is the new-ish database for real-time applications. We're going to create a new project which we'll name Firebase Demo, and we will configure it so that we can use for our Flutter app. Let's go into database, and here this is where we'll be able to create a new Firestore database. Let's click on that. I'm going to put it on test mode, so this way we won't have to do any authentication or anything of the sort. This is purely for development purposes. I'm going to choose Europe, that's where I'm at, and let's let it continue and do its thing. Meanwhile, we have our very basic application. I have an emulator running already. I'm going to run this. We have an error. Just going to remove this, and it should now be running. So we now have our Firestore database, and just for the sake of our little experiment here, I'm going to create a collection called messages. I'm going to add its first message. I'm going to create a field called text, and I'm just going to write here first message. We can see that we now have a new collection called messages with a document ID that is auto-generated, and inside this document we have one property which is text, called text, and its its value is first message. Since we're going to display messages, a list of messages, I'm going to create a variable here for us to use first locally just to try it out, and then we'll transform it into reading from a Firestore database. So let's do just that. Create a list here of messages. It's going to be empty for now. We are going to actually put in a few values. 1, 2. And following that, we're going to change what we have here, this column, this text, into actually a list view. In this case, a list view builder, because we're going to add multiple elements to this list. It's going to, we're going to need a builder here, so we're going to have a context and an index, and then we're going to return a text widget, and inside this text widget we're going to have our messages. We also need an item count, messages dot length. All right, so we have 1, 2. Because this is a list view inside a column, I'm going to have to add here an expanded, add new widget because of the flex widget. If we do this, we can see 1, 2. Just gonna add here a little bit of padding so that we can see it a little bit better. Okay, 1, 2. Now this is just data coming from here, and it's really not of any interest to us. What we do need is to install the Firestore package, and I have a few notes here to make our life a little bit easier, because often it can be a little bit tricky to get Firestore running properly with versioning, and as you'll see, some of the configurations for specifically Android, and I'm only doing the Android example today. So let's do exactly that. Let's get packages get. Since we're going to introduce a new package, we're going to have to rebuild our application so that this package is running as well. Now I'm going to have to configure the Android part of our application. So I'll go into our build Gradle inside our app. I'm going to add a few lines here. So I'm going to add apply plugin from the Google services at the end of this line. And I also need to add the multi-dex enabled inside the default config. Just so you can see a bit better what I've done. So we've added this line here, and we've added this line here. Also, we need to go into our Gradle properties and add in these 2 lines to confirm that Jetafire is enabled and Android X is enabled as well. We need all of these in order to be able to run Firestore properly. If you want more details on that, I would point you towards the documentation, as it would kind of run away a bit from the intent of this video. So our final settings are inside the build Gradle here, and we're going to replace these current settings with these specific versions, which I know already work, or at least work currently. Alright, so let's see if we can run our application now. Just gonna zoom in so you can see a bit better what we've changed inside the dependencies on the build script. And we have an issue. And the issue is that we've added all of these configurations, but it's missing the Google Services JSON, which is a file that we're going to get from Firebase. So to be able to run Firestore in our Flutter application on Android, we're going to have to configure it here. So we're going into the Android section here on Firebase, add an app, and my app is called app or Firebase Firestore actually demo. We're going to register it, and this is going to provide us with the JSON file with the Google Services configuration. I'm going to go here, get our file, copy it, and go back into, finish this wizard. Okay, and we have our app configured. So now we're going to go back into the Android Studio and paste our file here. Now let's try this again. See if our file will run, our app will run properly. Get no errors. These are just warnings from the deprecated APIs from the Cloud Firestore plugin on Android itself. So we have our current messages showing up here, 1 and 2, but these are just being loaded locally. So what we're going to do is create a method inside our main widget that's going to load our messages. And for that, we're going to use Firestore on instance. It's imported up here. And we're going to access our collection, which is called messages. And we're going to get documents. With these documents, we will then expect a query snapshot. And we'll be able to read our data. So what we want to do, as our messages are stored here in this list called messages, and that's what we're reading, and we're already using a list view builder which will dynamically change with the messages that we have, I'll be able to just come here to a set state messages and say that these messages are going to be equal to documents, and since this is a map, I'll be able to use the app method, and I will expect to get a message which I'll output as the string inside our text property of our Firestore document here, a message document. And then I'll need this to become a list instead of iterable, which is the normal output of the map, and save it like this. Now this method isn't being called anywhere yet, so we're going to add a button here to do exactly that. On pressed, we wanted to get messages, and we need a child. In this case, just gonna add here some text. It says load data. Save it and load data. First message, here we go. So now I'm gonna go back here and add a new message here. Text, another message. Saved it, it's present, we have first message, another message, and if I click look data, I get another message. That's all great. Now, obviously, if we're in our app, we'd like to be able to add messages directly from our app, let's suppose. So I'm going to create a text field here, and this text field on submit will To do that, I'm going to create a method down here saying add message called add message, and it's going once again Firestore instance collection messages, and this time I'm going to use add. This expects us to send it a map, and that's exactly what we'll do. And we're going to send text and our message. So I actually didn't create something here, so I'm going to do message and message. Okay, so we have a method to send messages into Firebase now. So let's try it out. I'm going to create a text fields, which on submission will call our our add message. So let's get our text, and this will call our add message, and we'll send our text. Okay. Now let's see what happens. So type something here and load data. There's our message. We can see that it's been added here. Let's see. There we go. Now you can see that these are, in this case, they're ordered strangely because our first message is in the middle, the other message is here, and the latest message is on the bottom. And this is because they're ordered by the ID, and the ID is obviously, as you can see here, they're ordered alphabetically. If we'd like this to be chronologically ordered, we'd have to create a field with a timestamp and order it by that timestamp. Right now, for the sake of this video, we're just going to do it in the simplest way. So now this is not the fun part of Firestore. The fun part of Firestore is that this is a real-time that does push database. So we'll be able to add messages and have them instantly show up in our app. And that's what we're going to do right now. So I'm going to add another method here, which is going to be listen to messages. And I'm going to do the same that we've done before, collection messages, with one difference. Instead of get documents now, we're going to go to snapshots. And snapshots is, as you think, a snapshot of what's going on currently on the database as it gets updated. So every time there's an update, we're going to get a push of a new snapshot of the database. So we're going to do snapshots and we're going to listen to them. Now, similar to what we've done above, or exactly what we've done above, we're going to do get a query snapshot, and we're going to do exactly what we've done here. We'll update our list. Now, what should happen here now is that we're going to write a new message, Thanksgiving, and once I click on it, nothing happens because I've actually not initiated this. So let's go up here and let's add an init state and say that we want to start listening to our messages as soon as this widget loads and the state is started. So we added our listen to messages here in our init state, and that means we need to do a hot restart so that this is initiated. And now we're going to be adding a new message, as before I made a mistake. And if I do it now, we got a new message. And let's add a few more words, and we have another message. So what's happening now is that we're adding a message here to our collection on Firestore. It gets added here somewhere, one of these, and once it gets added here, it triggers the push that sends the message to the new snapshot here that we're listening for, and set state updates our messages list and results in us getting a new message. So now this was a quite simple approach to Firestore and Flutter. I hope it's useful for some of you, and if there's interested in it, I'll follow up with a few more videos on adding a few more complexities to using Firestore and maybe Firebase, as obviously this is a document-based database, and it can be sometimes tricky to do a bit more complicated architectures for your apps. And if there's interest, we'll follow up with a few more videos to get us going and learning a bit more about Firebase and Flutter. Thank you for watching. I'll see you on the next one.